Welcome back to the Madden Method. In today's episode, we're going to go over cooling out your unclipped fuzzy horse in a central New York winter. Today I am riding Cyberflower. She is a 4-year-old Swedish warm blood, and I just finished walk, trot, canter, and jumping a couple cross rails, and I'm going to walk her around and make sure that her body temperature comes down a little bit and she stops breathing so hard, and that's my first step of cooling out. So I've been walking around for about 5 or 10 minutes or so. Her breathing has slowed down. I did work her pretty hard today, and it is quite cold out. She did get a little bit sweaty, as you can see here. It's about -5 degrees outside, and our indoor here at Madden is heated, but it is still probably about 30-35 degrees in here right now, just being so cold out. So I just need to really be sure I take care of her well now that I'm off and that she doesn't catch a chill. Okay, so I've gotten Flower on the cross ties, and my next step is to make sure she doesn't catch a chill. If you can imagine taking your jacket off, if you were sweaty and you hopped out into the cold, you'd probably catch a chill right away. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm prepared to put some coolers on her that are gonna help wick away the moisture from sweating. So I have my coolers ready before I take my saddle off, because I really don't want her to catch any kind of chill. We are lucky here at Madden's that our barn is heated a little bit. So if you're in an environment that is not heated and about the same temperature as it is outside, which right now for us is like Arctic cold, you want to make sure you have enough coolers that your horse will not catch a chill. Okay, so I have some coolers ready. These, hi, you're okay. These are wool. She has worn clothes before, she's just being a little bit silly, so I'm going to be a little careful with how I put this on, if she's having trouble with it today. I'm not just gonna fling it over her. But at least I have one layer on her right now before I do anything else. And as that sweat evaporates, this will help wick that moisture away from her skin, and she won't get cold. Now, I can take a towel and rub her sweaty areas, which will help the drying process a little bit. We always have these handy. So I've got her covered, and everywhere where she got sweaty, I'm just gonna take this towel and give it an initial rub. Feeling better. Chest, neck, under the saddle, the girth area. It's really, really important to understand the difference between your furry horse, unclipped horse, being outside without a blanket on in the rain or in the snow and getting wet from an outside source, and then working them and creating sweat. So when you have your furry horse out in the field and it's raining, their coat, if you've not clipped them, their coat is equipped to handle that and kind of create a waterproof barrier, and their undercoat stays dry. When you ride them and you work them and they sweat from their skin, you're getting that undercoat wet. So you can't just say, oh, their coat is waterproof, I can just put them in the stall without any help to try to cool them out. You need to get that undercoat dry before you can let them be without some kind of blanket. So wool is always the best option. Wool's not something that everybody could afford necessarily, but wool blankets are the best as far as taking moisture and wicking it away, and then also keeping your horse and yourself, for that matter, warm. So you can wear wool layers and get sweaty yourself, and it'll wick the moisture away from your skin, and it'll be wet, but it'll still be keeping you warm. That's the beauty of wool. And you might notice that these blankets have white hair on them here. You know, gray horses tend to leave white hair on everything, so we have specific coolers here that are white hair coolers, and we mark them, and that way your white hair doesn't get on your other chestnut and bay horses. So that's something that you can do as well. The more you can put on, if you're in a really cold environment, the better. I mean, you can stack 2, 3, 4, 5 coolers on top of one another. If you're in a non-heated environment, you know, our barn is at 40 degrees, so I'm just gonna put 2 on. This one's a little bit big for her. She's a little bit of a small type, so I'm not gonna let her loose in her stall with these on. I'm gonna probably put her back and tie her up so she can't roll, but having a surcingle like this will help keep these in place if you had a horse that you could let loose in the stall. And this way, if they roll, they're not gonna get tangled up in their coolers. Okay, so I've had her in here for a little while now, and the benefits of layering the wool coolers would be that the under layers are gonna wick that moisture away from her skin, and it's gonna pull it to the surface. So what I'm gonna do is periodically, as she's cooling down, you know, give her 10, 15 minutes or so, check and look at the cooler, and your outer cooler is gonna start to get this little haze of water on it. When you see that, you're gonna come in and you're gonna pull your outer layer off. And then you're gonna leave whatever layer or layers that you have underneath. You're gonna leave them there. And maybe if your horse is loose in the stall and not tied up like her, maybe you're gonna wanna put that surcingle back on to hold everything together. And then come back in 10 or 15 minutes and check again. And maybe that next layer is gonna have a little like little water droplets on the outside of it. That means it's working. Leave the other layers on. You don't pull the first layer up, you pull the top layers off, and just keep pulling them off until you get down to 1. And then, you know, 10, 15 minutes after that, you look, make sure that they're completely dry, and then you can pull it off, brush them off, and they should be good. So a little old horseman's tip from John Madden: if you don't have a towel handy, something to do that initial, you know, rub down with, you can just use good old-fashioned straw and rub your horse down wherever they're sweaty, and that straw is gonna absorb that moisture. So if you get in a pinch and this is all you have, it really does work great. Okay, so if you don't have access to wool coolers, or maybe you only have one, you can use a variety of different coolers, or they call them like AntiSweat Sheets. This I would call an AntiSweat Sheet or an Irish knit, and it's just a cotton knit material, and these do wick away moisture fairly well. I'd say in a really cold environment, you wouldn't just want just one of these. You would want multiple ones of these, or this paired with something else. Here we have kind of a knit blend cooler, and here's a polar fleece. These wick away moisture quite well as well, but again, like wool, if you have the ability to get 1 or 2 or more wool coolers, great resource in cold weather. Really the best material that you can have for moisture wicking and keeping them warm at the same time. So here, if you look close, you can see the beads of moisture that have come out on the outside of this wool cooler. And that means it's working, and I'm coming in here to check and see how ready she is to be groomed. And she feels pretty dry. So I'm gonna take this last cooler off. And if I've given her enough time, and if this blanket's done its job, she should be pretty dry under here. All right, so Flower has had plenty of time to get cooled off, and I'm gonna feel her chest, and she's not warm anymore, and everywhere that she was sweaty is just kind of crusty. So Now I've got to go back and groom her. Yes, this is a lot of work when you have a horse that's not clipped in the winter, but I feel like the benefits of not clipping them outweigh clipping them. So they can live like a horse, they can be turned out without a blanket, they still have all their natural defenses. I, as the handler, just have to do a little bit more grooming and a little bit more care as far as cooling them out properly. What this last grooming is going to do is get rid of all these sweat marks and all the crustiness and re-fluff up her coat. And it's also going to give me a chance to inspect her one more time, make sure there's no cuts or swellings or anything that could have happened when I was riding. And you can refer back to our original grooming video for more grooming tips. Okay, so some other winter cooling out tips for you. When you put them back in their stall with their blankets on, their coolers on, you want to make sure that they don't just guzzle down a whole bucket of cold water. That can give them a bellyache. You can allow them to have a little sip of water and then probably remove their buckets until they're cool. They can munch on some hay while they're cooling out, but you don't want to feed them grain until they're completely cool. And that all just is to prevent some colic that can happen from things like that. Remember, a good horseman always puts their horse's needs before their own. So make sure if you're going to leave your horse unclipped in the winter and still work it and get them sweaty, that you allow yourself enough time to cool them down properly. And a good horseman also never puts a horse away with a sweat mark. So make sure you take them back out, groom them, and make them look as beautiful as Cyberflower here. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Madden Method. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel.